To the final at Wembley, where, of course, they could face Bayern Munich or Real Madrid. For more on this, let's welcome in Frank Leboeuf is with us, as is Jurgen Klinsmann. Jurgen...
Listen. This is going to be the easiest show we've ever done. Because Jurgen's going to talk about Borussia Dortmund.
Yes.
And then we're going to, while we all sit here, we're going to then move on to this all-German final in London.
Oh,
right.
What a dream.
Give me a call when we're ready.
Right. Jurgen, what a performance from Borussia Dortmund over the two legs.
Yeah, I think over the two legs, a very good performance, very positive performance. Defensively, it's very strong. Obviously, you know, Paris Saint-Germain hit 4 times the woodwork. Tonight, 2 times in the first leg. And so you can talk about a bit lack of, just not lucky enough or kind of fortunate enough in a certain way. But there's a reason, you know, there's a reason why you're not going through to a final with all the chances that Paris Saint-Germain had, you know. And we were all talking about Mbappe in the second leg, and he will be the difference maker. He will come in and show up. And unfortunately, that was not the case. Not the way he wants it to happen, because he's obviously the outstanding player on the planet at the moment. But he was not able to put his stamp on these 2 semi-final legs with Borussia Dortmund. Dortmund did it very, very solid, very strong, very tough as a unit, very tough as a team, physically present, and good leadership by the older guys in the Dortmund side, especially Mark Hummels, and they got the job done. But if you're Luis Enrique, obviously you're frustrated, you're disappointed, you're down now, because it was so much there for you to grab this final in Wembley for you as Paris Saint-Germain. It was a huge chance to do that, and they didn't do it. I was a little bit disappointed with PSG in the first half. You know, they played like, okay, you know what, we have the whole 90 minutes. We don't need to necessarily score in the first half, so they didn't create anything in the first half. And we're not decisive enough, we're not physical enough, nasty enough that, you know, you show your opponent that you want to go to Wembley. It's not you, it's me going to Wembley. They thought, okay, you know, we come back then in the second half and then take care of business. But when Mats Hummels scored this header, the game was over. Even if they had these 4, you know, hit 4 times the post. But you never really had the feeling that it will go in. It will never go their way tonight, because PSG, and Frank knows it better than me, you know, never gave you the feeling that they are so desperate and so hungry and so determined to make it happen. And Dortmund just kind of ran down the clock and played their way, and were always a little bit dangerous on the counter break and got the job done.
Is it just PSG are unlucky?
No. No, Vitinha's unlucky, Mendes is unlucky. When they're lottery strikes, you know, he sails over the bar, hits the woodwork, goes in the top corner. That's a little unlucky when you're shooting from that distance and clipping the post. Could go anyway. The other stuff is just bad finishing. So I don't think they're unlucky. They were not good enough. They were not good enough. They had a great opportunity against one of the weaker sides on paper in the competition. Ironically, it turns out they've been one of the stronger sides. Dortmund have been brilliant in the Champions League, very average by their standards in the Bundesliga. You got Mats Hummels, who 18 months ago, I don't think anybody thought he could play at this level anymore with that kind of quality, particularly with the legs going. But he led Dortmund again. You know, when somebody needed to come out and close, there was one incident in the second half where it was it might have been Vitinha or Zaire Emery, whoever it was, got the ball 25, 30 yards from goal to take a strike, and it was Mats Hummels, not a midfielder, that comes sprinting out to shut it down, put his body on the line. That's just, as Jurgen said, that's desire, that's effort. And 180 minutes plus injury time against a defence that's not renowned for being rock solid. PSG have not scored, and spare me the woodwork sort of stories. They were not good enough, and Dortmund were superb, organised brilliantly. I did not think they could do it for 180 minutes, maybe 90, not 180. But fair play to them, fair play. They deserve to be in the final.
For some context, if we want to talk about what Borussia Dortmund have been in Bundesliga, their last shutout was in their Klassiker, March 30th. So So we got to go back more than a month ago to find a shutout. And now, in the last week or so, 2 shutouts against what we consider to be one of the strongest teams in Europe, against potentially the best player in the world in Kylian Mbappe. And so you have to wonder, yeah, is there an element of good fortune? Yes, of course. But in order for you to advance in this competition, you have to have some of that. But there's also an element here of PSG, and I think Jurgen just touched on it, how there was so much lacking in urgency, in understanding the magnitude of the moment. Why do you need to wait until the last 10, 15 minutes so that you actually have sustained pressure, wave after wave after wave of attack? We think of the magical nights in Europe, and we think, say, for example, Anfield. When Liverpool are jumping and are electric and Anfield, there is wave after wave after wave of attack, and it's impossible to withstand that sort of pressure. I was expecting something similar to that from PSG from the start of the match, and it wasn't. It was sideways and back and slow and slower and predictable, and it just allowed Borussia Dortmund to comfortably sit in their shape and say, yeah, we'll work this side-to-side stuff because you're not really threatening in behind. And to that point of threatening behind, while I understand that there wasn't a whole lot of space, it wasn't until the 80th minute that we finally saw Kylian Mbappe with a diagonal movement that got in behind Nico Schlotterbeck and ahead of Mats Hummels. The 80th minute is when we see Kylian Mbappe getting in behind. While I get it, and before we go crazy on this, I understand that Dortmund's shape was good, but there were moments where there was something else to be done, to threaten him behind, to force him back so that you can have the space underneath, and that never happened with any sort of urgency, with any sort of intensity. It wasn't until the last 15 minutes where you actually saw wave after wave after wave of attack. Too late. By then, too late. This should have been the rhythm of the game to begin with, and it wasn't, and it allowed Dortmund to grow in confidence and eventually score a goal and put this match away.
Frank Leboeuf, how do you explain that nonchalant start to this game from PSG?
Well, it's always hard to be the last to speak and to find something different than the others, but it's a mentality. It's the involvement you want to put on the game or you don't want to, and it was clearly what happened today with Paris Saint-Germain. It was a crazy atmosphere before the game, with the fans being there for 2 hours before the game, putting fantastic tifos and everything. And as soon as the game started, the atmosphere went down, because the Paris Saint-Germain didn't put all ingredients that you need in the semi-final of the Champions League. And Ali just finished his explanation with that. The craziness. Something more than the others. Like you are kind of desperate to get something out of it, and you go for it and you try something. David Ginola was speaking on the French television, say they try something and then they go back and they give the ball back to Vitinha or Marquinhos, and they start again. They try. They never try to change for Mbappe, who sometimes was on his own, or Dembele starting from right to go to left, starting from left to go to right with a big round range, but they didn't try anything. So we have the tendency to also find the problems in the game, where I want to first put, for me, how strong and clever Borussia Dortmund have been on the 2 legs, and the way Mbappe was unable to work on that because of the covering that they made when he had the ball. But again, and the guy talked about that, they didn't try. They didn't go for it. They were thinking. That's the problem with nowadays games, where you try to have the possession of the ball, but you forget the spirit of the game, scoring a goal. If you have 530 passes, 30 shots, and you hit 4 times the post, and you don't score a goal in one game, you have a problem. You really have a problem. And on top of not putting all ingredients, there was a lack of efficiency clearly for Paris Saint-Germain today.
Do you know all these stats that say, whoa, you know...
Is that what they say?
Yeah, well, maybe they do, I don't know. You know, I know they're weighted heavily on PSG's favour, particularly in this game. But I still don't feel that they were brilliant. In fact, I don't think they were much better than just above average. And maybe that's down to Dortmund as well, but I think a big piece of it is them. And I think sometimes when we talk about managers and stuff, you know, there's a manager that's had a bit of a troubled season in Edin Terzic, but you've interviewed him. God bless him.
And what a lovely... I think I was the inspiration.
Yes. But I think he's a genuine guy.
Oh, he's a great guy. He was lovely.
You know, and we see a lot of these managers coming out and, you know, press conferences talking nonsense and stuff. He just, whenever you see him, he sort of wears his heart on his sleeve. He gives you an honest answer. And so I think there's certainly a piece of me that when you look at this club, when you look at likes of Hummels at the back and, you know, what he's got available to him, which is not what some of these other clubs have, then you've got to feel quite pleased for him and what this is going to do for the end of their season. I mean, the Borussia Dortmund fans at Wembley are going to be absolutely brilliant. Just how competitive they're going to be if they can continue this form in the Champions League, maybe they will be, remains to be seen. But, you know, I think you have to at times be pleased for a manager who, at the start of the season, you're thinking, right, what does this season hold for them? They're not going to probably win the Bundesliga, which they're not, and they haven't. And they're probably not going to be anywhere near the Champions League. And yet here he is going in to this final in June, whatever it is, and, you know, he's going to be leading his team out. It's an amazing story.
It really is, Jurgen, especially when you consider how they ended the season. Last year, of course, shooting themselves in the foot, handing the title to Bayern Munich, yet they come out, struggle domestically. He's been sacked 3 or 4 times pretty much this season, but has hung on. How much credit should he receive for what he's done with this group of players to get them into a Champions League final?
Edin Terzic should receive a lot of credit for what happened just now with Borussia Dortmund this year. Obviously, how they finished last year with this huge disappointment to lose the German championship on the last day. You know, he was down, he was attacked, accused, offended everywhere, all over the media world, obviously in Germany. It was tough weeks, tough months for Edin. He pulled himself together and says, you know what, I'm going to go forward, I'm going to go through that and figure out a way to manage it. And then came another very difficult season for him with Bayer Leverkusen running off and winning the German title, first time ever. and not being consistent enough in the Bundesliga, having always problems here. And a lot of people always saying, you know, we don't know what we get from Borussia Dortmund week in, week out. One game is superb, the next game is bad. But somehow he figured it out to make it work in the Champions League. Somehow this team kind of always came together when it really mattered in the Champions League games. And he had a fantastic run throughout the entire Champions League season. And now then the final at Wembley. And this is a little fairy tale story on its own with Edin Terzic in charge of it. And I'm thrilled. I'm happy for him. So he really should receive a lot of compliments and a lot of credit for what they just did. But it was something that kind of everybody wanted so badly. It was the energy that they put together. It was their belief that they have. It was, you know, the bodies they put on the line defensively, and they threw themselves into the balls. And there was no ego player on the field from Borussia Dortmund. And that made the difference. And that's why they are in the final.
Frank, who caught your eye from Dortmund over these 2 legs, away from Hummels?
Oh, away from... I would say Adeyemi. I mean, by the work that he made offensively, of course, and today he had a great chance, but big save from Donnarumma. But the way he was working with Madsen to deal with Dembele, defensively, especially the first leg, he was coming back, tackling Dembele many times. Today also at the beginning of the game we saw that. So I have to put him. I think the 4 at the back have been absolutely fantastic, working so well all together. And I can't forget Kobel, because he made a great save, even if it wasn't a good shot from Mbappe. He had that move with his left arm and then put it in a wood on a post. So I would say most of them, but Adeyemi and of course Hummels have been absolutely tremendous, the 2 legs. Yeah.
Let me just give an honorable mention to a player who, if indeed you are playing his position, you're I suppose evaluated on how many goals you score. And this is the case of Niklas Füllkrug, who scored the game winner in the first leg. But today, his job may go unnoticed and unappreciated by most, but it was so important. And in playing this sort of old-school back-to-goal, it's me against the world, and whenever that ball comes out, I have to be strong enough to hold it just enough so that then we can get out on the counter, so that then we can relieve some pressure. And he did that fairly well for the first 60-65 minutes, and it allowed Borussia Dortmund to, at the very least, have a threat in the counter. And in order to do that, you're not thinking about goals. You're thinking about, you know what, this may not go in the score sheet, this may not be appreciated by most, but this is critical for our success today. I'm going to have to hold it up so that Adeyemi can run in behind, so that there can be other runners coming from behind. But first and foremost, when that ball comes out, I'm going to have to hold it and withstand the pressure of the defenders that are trying to get that ball and create a turnover so that they can go on the attack again. So if I lose it, they're attacking again. But if I keep it, now it allows us to get out.
Jadon Sancho's in a Champions League final, Craig.
It's amazing for him. I mean, he had this great game in particular in Dortmund. We talked about it. He hasn't, I mean, to be fair, if you go and look at his Bundesliga games preceding that, they have been inconsistent. But there's no doubt he's a much happier bunny where he is. And by the way, where would you rather be at this moment in time? And I'm not just talking about tonight. You know, I'm talking about in the last few weeks. Would you rather be... And you've made me squeeze Man United into a Champions League semi-final.
No, not at all.
You know, look, there's one place that's a shambles at the moment, and, you know, it cannot be a great atmosphere, and that is Manchester United. And you've got Dortmund where he's happy. This is a great place to be. They've got a final to look forward to. So we can discuss the whys and where-nots about where it all went wrong, but it is what it is, and he's in the final.
Frank, you mentioned Kylian Mbappe. You talked about how tactically Borussia Dortmund did excellently to contain him. However, people will come at you and say, well, look, people did everything tactically to stop Lionel Messi, to stop Cristiano Ronaldo. If we're putting Kylian Mbappe on that pedestal, it's nights like these that he's got to prove the difference.
That's true, and they would be right. And I was frustrated. The first leg, we didn't see anything, but we say, okay, maybe. And Jurgen, you alluded it, at the beginning of the show, saying that we were expecting something. It never happened. It's like he never wanted to go into the game and take the lead and say, okay, I'm going to show you guys, you know, how we're going to go for it. Dembele tried a little bit, was quite inconsistent at some point, but we never saw Mbappe. He was trying to do something, seeing that he couldn't go. He was coming back and giving the ball back to either Fabian or Reece and or Vitinha. He never tried. He never went for the challenge. And it's why I was frustrated. If you are a player with that talent, Messi would have gone for it. Ronaldo would have gone for it. Maybe they would have been stubborn. But he never tried. And that's very frustrating because you know the talent that he has and you know that he can be... He can create a difference, and he didn't today.
At least the image that we see from Mbappe in today's match and in the last week's match, too comfortable allowing other guys taking a leadership role in the attack. Too comfortable allowing Dembele running with the ball, and Barcola running with the ball, and Vitinha being their best player. At some point, you, because of who you are, and your skill set and your stature in the game, you have to be the one that says, no, me. Give me the ball. So many times we think of Kylian Mbappe as a guy who says me about the contract conversations, the negotiations, the rumors, the news, the front page. But it's in this sort of moment in the game in which I want you and we want you to say me. Give me the ball. Because I am the one that has the skill set and has the tool to make a difference. I cannot be as good as Mats Hummels has been over the last couple of games and Nico Schlotterbeck. I cannot be controlled and dominated by Mats Hummels at this point in his career. You cannot allow that to happen if you're Kylian Mbappe. As good as he might have been, and I'm not taking credit away for the center backs because they were great, and the back four, they were great. Not taking credit from them. But at this point, in Mats Hummels' career, he cannot be capable of controlling Kylian Mbappe if Kylian Mbappe is running at him with speed. But we never saw that. Now, you can give credit to Hummels in that he didn't expose himself and he didn't allow that to happen. But Mbappe never forced it, never actually made it happen himself. And if Kylian Mbappe is not doing it, What, we're expecting Dembele to be consistent all of a sudden? That's never going to happen. We're expecting Bradley Barcola to make the difference? Well, he's a young guy. Vitinha's hitting shots from everywhere trying to make it happen. Didn't quite work out for him. So you look at Mbappe to be the guy, and if he's not the guy, who is? Nobody.
It seems the king's ransom they paid him to stay in the end was not worth it.
Nope.
Now, he stayed to be the difference maker, and he was not. Maybe he would have been the difference maker had he gone to Real Madrid before he led everybody down the garden path, including Real Madrid and PSG at times before he turned on some claptrap story about project. Maybe he would have been the difference maker there. But he had to be the guy that stood up in this game. Now, you mentioned, we talked about it last week, the Messis and the Ronaldos, they just had something special at those key moments that drove their sides to excellence, to brilliance, to the pinnacle. He didn't have it. And I tell you what, he's going to go to Real Madrid, and we all know that. But he goes to Real Madrid, and there's a guy at Real Madrid I would have before him at this moment in Vinicius Jr.
Really?
Who is the difference maker in big games, who does turn up and who does do special things. I know he's won a World Cup. I know he's a great player. Right? But I think he has to refocus a little bit on what this game is all about for him, you know, and been able to be able to balance out what he's striving for as an individual and what's most important as a team. And I don't think he's quite figured that out yet. Even at this, maybe he will when he goes to Spain. Maybe he will. But he was a major, major disappointment. I mean, it's not just this game.
No.
Barcelona, 2 legs. A poor Barcelona side, another defensively poor side. He was not great. Semi-finals, 2 legs, Borussia Dortmund, not great. That's not what you're looking for when you pin yourself up as a superstar.
Go on, Frank.
I have a question for the guys, you know, and Jurgen said that maybe his head was already somewhere else. Don't you think that the fact that it could have been a Paris Saint-Germain Real Madrid final was into his head, and that he was maybe subconsciously wondering what will be his attitude fighting against the next club he's going to play, maybe winning against the next club he's going to play, that maybe that was too hard to analyze?
Frank, what if you answer your own question? What would you say?
I would say that it shouldn't happen. You should go do your job and see what's going on. But it's true that I imagine myself, you know, giving my big time for Strasbourg, for example, knowing that I'm going to sign for Chelsea and we're going to play the final of the Champions League against each other. So, oh, what will be the welcome from the fans if I win the Champions League? And then you start thinking too much about that, and maybe you start not playing your game the way you should play it.
Well, he wasn't great against Barcelona for 2 legs, and he knows he's not going there. And I don't think it's a factor at all, because I think at one point we all thought Man City were going to knock Real Madrid out, particularly in the second leg. Didn't happen. Look, there's no... I don't think that comes into it. If the worst case scenario, if people think of it that way, it was PSG, Real Madrid at the final, he scores a hat-trick. All he's doing is showing Real Madrid. You know, there'll be a few fans that will be, oh, yeah, just a few. Yeah. Most of them will be like, that's what we're getting. That's what we're getting. So I don't think...
As well, where Marquinhos put the header and was on his own. I don't understand that. You know, when you have Hummels, and I would have taken care of it, I would be grabbing his shirt, you know, trying to keep him down. And he was on his own. It's too easy. The guy is huge, he's tall, he's talented. Thank you very much.
How much blame will Luis Enrique get for this, Frank?
Well, yeah, he has to be blamed. I mean, we have a coach here with Jurgen. I don't know how he sees that. And we talked about that so many times. I love to give responsibilities for the players. It's like who takes a penalty? Who is the second to take a penalty? And we see arguments in the middle of the park with players, you know, arguing because they want to shoot the penalty. It should be said, done, tried before. That's professional. We are talking about professional players. We have to know who's marking Hummels. And if you decide to go in zone, and when you see that, I'm sorry, you're responsible for that.
Jurgen, who would you pin the blame on for that?
Now, for us coaches, it's this discussion, zonal marking, man marking is a very, very intensive one because obviously a little bit our more traditional approach is clearly, that we coaches like more the man marking approach.
As well, where Marquinhos put the header and was on his own. I don't understand that. When you have Hummels, and I would have taken care of it, I would be grabbing his shirt, trying to keep him down. And he wasn't his own. It's too easy. The guy is huge, he's tall, he's talented. Thank you very much.
How much blame will Luis Enrique get for this, Frank?
Well, yeah, he has to be blamed. I mean, we have a coach here with Jurgen. I don't know how he sees that. And we talked about that so many times. I love to give responsibilities for the players. It's like who takes a penalty? Who is the second to take a penalty? And we see arguments in the middle of the park with players, arguing because they want to shoot the penalty. It should be said, done, tried before. That's professional. We are talking about professional players. We have to know who's marking Hummels. And if you decide to go in zone, and when you see that, I'm sorry, you're responsible for that.
Jurgen, who would you pin the blame on for that?
Now, for us coaches, it's this discussion, zonal marking, man marking is a very, very intensive one because obviously a little bit our more traditional approach is clearly, that we coaches like more the man marking approach because you give clear responsibility to each player being responsible for whoever you tell them to mark, whoever will then be the one that they are responsible for. If you go into zonal marking, it is also at the very end, and that's maybe sometimes a misunderstanding of how people kind of look at it, it's still happening then to go man against man in that specific zone. So no matter if you now go man marking or zonal marking, when the ball comes in your zone, whoever comes into your little tiny zone, you are responsible to make sure that your opponent coming into this little area is not scoring, and this is now something where obviously players get away with it because they have an alibi because okay, I didn't see the ball, the guy coming 5 yards out and jumping over me. Exactly. But this is something that you can discuss up and down and argue up and down and then they say, they call the coaches a little bit old school. If they say we go back to man marking, I would be mostly man marking if I have the choice, or if I do it actually. And other coaches say, no, I'm going fully zonal. But if you go fully zonal, I want to be a striker again because I've run from 10 yards at you and overjump you every time, even at the age of 60.
Exactly, exactly, and you're sorry, but exactly. But on top of that, if you're saying that if the guy is in your zone, you are responsible. But if you have two guys in your zone, so are you responsible for the two guys because nobody's going to help you out? So I mean, I understand what you're saying, and you just said it at the end. You would have loved to face a team who plays in zone because you're so free. And you can run and go in between two players. And we saw that with Beraldo and Marquinhos not having a clue where Hummels is. That's a big problem for me.
I'm not going to go on about zonal and man marking. But let's not forget, that wasn't the goal that knocked him out. That was just the icing on the cake, wasn't it?
Yeah, indeed.
They were already through at that point.
Yeah.
That was just...
That would help. It just helps them cross the line.
Yeah.
By the way, Frank and Jurgen's zonal marking podcast drops next month. Yep.